21st century has proven to be a century of representation, from telling the stories that have never been told before to showcasing identities across film and television of people of different races, genders, sexualities, disabilities, and so on. In the past 10 years, there have been several great examples of representations of the LGBTQAI+ people of color in cinema and television. In this essay, I will focus on 3 prime examples: the FX show Pose, the Logo VH1 show RuPaul's Drag Race, and the 2016 Oscar-winning film Moonlight. Pose premiered on FX in 2018, and its second season is to air on June 11th of this year. The show follows a group of queer people of color and trans women as they live in New York City in the 1980s throughout the AIDS crisis. It focuses directly on the ball scene, which was an underground community in New York that competed in drag balls. While the characters in the show are fictional, they are based off of real members of the queer community in New York during this time. Historically, up until the civil rights movement, the communities of color in urban centers such as Harlem and Washington, D.C. were extremely accepting of their queer members. According to Russell's The Color of Discipline, when the civil rights movement was getting started, the community decided to push these queer members underground to have a better face to present to white America. These groups of queer people of color grew as an outcasted society and developed families of their own, which were known as houses. Each house had a designated mother, and the members of the family were her children. The children were often homeless and were taken in by the mother into the house. Pose does something unique by taking a story from a largely unrepresented group and showing it on national television. This show not only focuses on representing race, but also representing LGBTQ+ groups, and specifically trans women. In the Bell Hooks and Laverne Cox discussion, they speak about how there is an intense fight on television to tell stories of trans people without being objectifying. I believe that Pose nails this right on the head as they focus on the characters themselves as people, rather than just discussing them and including them for diversity's sake, or the idea of plastic representation that Warner discusses. In reality television, RuPaul's Drag Race has been on since 2009, when it premiered on Logo Television. It has been on for 11 seasons and it has now moved to VH1. The show is set up in a competition format, as multiple drag queens are invited on each season to compete for the title of America's Next Drag Superstar. While the show started off to modest viewership largely from the LGBTQ+ community, the viewership has now grown past the community and is now one of the largest watched shows on television. The show is pushing boundaries through its focus on the drag community, but also through its showcase of queer people of color. Not only is the host of the show a person of color, but many of the show's winners are people of color, as well as many of the contestants. Like in the Warner piece, the show does not include these people just to show that they have diversity. They're included for their talent and skill as drag queens and as members of the community. Since the show is reality television, it does exaggerate some aspects of the competition, but the people and the stories they are telling about these people are real and accessible, and it allows for young queer folk across the world to be able to watch and see themselves represented. As great as this show is, it also has run into some issues. RuPaul himself has made very transphobic remarks, as well as stating that trans queens shouldn't be allowed to compete on the show, even though trans women had competed on the show before their transition. RuPaul received a lot of backlash about this comment, and soon after, drag queens Sonique and Gia Gunn, who are both trans women, appeared back on the show. The show has also run into issues with using transphobic remarks in language. This goes to show that even as inclusive as popular media can try to be, it is never truly perfect. Something that is important in media studies is this idea of, while understanding the cultural significance of something, you can also still critique it and understand its flaws. Moving to cinema, the Oscar award-winning Best Picture from 2016 was Moonlight, which was written and directed by Barry Jenkins and based on Terrell Alvin McCraney's play In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. The film follows a young man through 3 different stages of his life: his childhood, his teen years, and his adulthood. It was the first film with an all-black cast and the first LGBTQ+ related film to win the Best Picture award. The main character of the film, Chiron, is a young black man who is gay and struggles within his own community. He struggles to understand his queerness, but he's guided by adults in his community, specifically Juan and Teresa. The film sheds light on gay people who are in the black community, but also looks at poverty in the American South. Just as well, it looks into ideas about masculinity in the black community, as there is often a constant push for men not to cry or to be strong. Juan teaches Chiron that he can be vulnerable, but Chiron is getting conflicting messages from the outlying community. In Stuart Hall's What is Black Popular Culture, he discusses how many people in the black community have differing experiences, such as Chiron. Hall writes about how there needs to be more representation in media, showing the diversity in experiencing black communities, and I believe that this film does that well. While these 3 examples of queer representation of people of color in film and television are not perfect, I believe that they are some of the strongest examples out there in media today. We can strive to be better, but for now we can also celebrate these examples of representation.